Hey,
Hey, good morning. How are you?
I finally get to put a face to the voice. How you
Yeah,
doing, man?
I'm not doing too bad at all. You could say that we're kind of jowl to jowl this morning.
Indeed we could. Oh boy, it was nice to be up there last weekend.
Yeah, I saw your video. Looked like you had a beautiful day.
My gosh, the second day. I mean, the first day I had to go to I went to the Halliburton Forest, which was incredible. I want to talk about their incredible canteen in Putin and burgers, just the best. I mean, I've eaten all across the country, and that was just phenomenal. But it was nice to go up there. I'm going to go up fishing, I think, in the spring. And excuse me. But then the next day, I went to the Algonquin Highlands, and I overshot the Frost Center. I seem to recall my daughter had gone up there for a weekend worth of camping uh, when she was in junior high. They used to go up there, maybe in grade 6 or something. Anyway, I hadn't been to the Dorset Tower in, oh my gosh, it's got to be 40 years.
Wow.
That's beautiful in there.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
had a
quite the
great
sight.
time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's why I'm starting to think about getting a place up your way. I mean, my mom is still alive. She's 89 in July, living in the house in Halifax, and my sister is very attentive, as are the neighbors. I have a place in Nova Scotia, but my daughters can't come down. I mean, they come down, but not like they would if I had a cottage.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'd love to get a little piece of property up that way and put. I've been on this site called Cabin Space,
Oh, yeah.
and everybody, they're really, really charming small cabins. And I believe they have one close to the Halliburton Forest. And they're eco-friendly, which is what my daughters are all about. They're not about ostentation. And as am I to a certain degree. I mean, I like my comfort, but anyway, over the next few years, I'd like to find myself up your way in one of those, because one of the great things about your region, it's a four-season.
Yeah,
It's four-season enjoyment.
yeah. It really is. It really is. And when we're not in a pandemic period like we are now, it's just chock-a-block of arts and lively arts of all kinds. The visual arts, the performing arts, opera, you name it, we've got it, and it's every
Where
season
do
of the
you go
year.
for that in Halliburton? Do you go down to Gravenhurst or to Bracebridge, or what venue do you use there?
We have the Northern Lights Performing Arts Pavilion, which is about a 235 seat center in the high school.
Ah,
And it's used for the summer festival and the Highlands Opera Studio, and for some of the little theater productions as well. So it's a pretty well used venue. There is a move afoot by a committee. They formed a charitable organization to look into building an actual 500-seat performing arts center
ah,
with facility for building sets, offices,
great idea.
place where you can have a drink after the show,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
that sort of stuff. So that's very exciting, because that's been long needed, and it
You
gives
know
us
what, Mike? If you ever want me to come up there and do a benefit that raises money for that, I'm there in a heartbeat.
wow.
Because I did that January 4th of 2020, believe it or not, in Stratford, because they have no theater and no culture center that's exclusive to locals.
Wow.
And we raised, gee whiz, what did we raise? I think we raised about $82,000, maybe
Wow.
more.
Wow. Wow.
And we had 1,700 people in the theater. So if you wanted to if that committee wants to put something together where maybe the local rink is not in use, or
Yeah,
maybe that,
I
when
gotcha.
things loosen up again, you're still going to be there though, right?
I'll be here on and off.
Okay. Well,
But
who's ever in charge of that committee, if you want to give them my name,
yeah, sure.
By all means.
And you have got another gig coming up, and that's what I
I
want to
do.
say. So, yeah, uh,
Yeah.
you're good. Are you on set right now?
Yeah, this is my living room. And live, so the show is live from my living room. And that's a few uh, a few things I picked up in my travels. And I mean, Canada has provided me, other than a living, these hidden boons when I had the opportunity to embrace the spirit of people and place from coast to coast.
Mm.
And I I actually celebrate that in my book that's coming out in September with Random House. It's called All Over the Map, and it's got a different rhythm. And although it's in my voice, but it's it's a dozen chapters, and it took a long time to write. And it as well as embracing the road and the virtues of following my bliss from the early days of running a trap line around the frozen lip of Lake Superior, playing half a dozen theaters, which weren't theaters at all, but Legion halls, community centers, and church basements that had acoustic systems only a mime could love. And I I knew right then and there in the winter of '99, outside of Atikokan, 500 people in the town, two last names, just living the Canadian showbiz dream, that I was onto something authentic, that I was onto something tactile. It was a real you could feel. And so that's still the note I try to hit in my performances. But I mean, right here, the stage you're looking at now, my living room, we had to adapt. We had, as the psychic paradigm shifted with the advent of COVID, I just couldn't let the plague scuttle 25 years of hard work.
Yeah.
It takes so long to become proficient at this craft. And trust me, Mike, when you sit down at a blank piece of paper, it's not like you've got the equation. You don't know where it's coming from every time you sit in front of it. You just have to have your antenna up and reading and listening and voice, having an opinion on things that isn't going to alienate the room.
Yeah.
And today, when everything has become so fractured and polarized, like you said, when you were talking about your benefit for the people who needed it in town, the business, all sorts of different walks of life coalesced into one single cause. And I always thought that was the role of comedy.
Yeah.
At least, well, not always, because when you're cocky and young, you think that you can, preach and change the world, right? When really the best thing that you can do is, for the 2 hours you're on that stage, get everybody on the same page.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a comedian's job to rock the apple cart as well as ride in it. And God knows, I mean, it's imperative that we hold power to account. Look what happened south of the border when they didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still 74 million people down there who think the election was stolen. And God bless good old Uncle Joe for turning that nation around in 48 hours.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's still 395 million weapons in the hands of 375 million people, of whom half believe he shouldn't be president. So whether or not he's going to be able to make America sane again is something else entirely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've noticed fractures and changes in Canada, particularly when I play the West. They're always so bilious toward the East. And it's too bad because, Alberta and Saskatchewan to a certain degree, and Canada's North, have been great for Atlantic Canadians. I mean, I was playing Calgary and Alberta in the days when oil was $421 a barrel. So I said to people, every time a car blew up in Baghdad, there were 2 new trucks in every Albertan's driveway. But yet when you're out there, as politics moves increasingly harder to the right, and the left becomes so much more sensitive about cancel culture. It's an interesting minefield for a comedian to negotiate.
It really
Because
is.
I always said, you have to strike a balance between artistic needs and audience expectation, but you can never lose the room, because those people who paid $60 are sitting beside people who also paid $60, and they might be on total polarities of opinion when it comes to how things are. So I think you have to be an equal opportunity offender when it comes to politics in Canada. You hit the Liberals as hard as you hit the Conservatives, and the NDP have always been Canadians' conscience of the working man, and then the Green Party, of course. Good luck milking those unicorns. That's my opinion. But it's an interesting time, but performing here, Mike, not hearing the laughs. I mean, laughter is essential. It's the adhesive that holds the art form of stand-up together.
Yeah, it's your antenna, isn't it?
Yeah, and without hearing laughs, you're just a nut bar talking to themselves, which I have been for the last year. Right? Like I said to somebody, I said, "Cripes, man, I've been talking to the four walls by myself. I might as well charge a ticket to see it."
Well,
but honest to God, honest to God, it's almost like I'm in a capsule orbiting the Nebulon galaxy, sending jokes back to fellow Earthlings. I'm not hearing anything, which ironically is exactly what I experienced the first 2 years of doing stand-up comedy. So life has come full circle. Yeah. You got to love the irony of that, eh?
Yeah, I do. And, well, having done our fundraiser in November, and it was a virtual show, I went through exactly the same feelings that you had. There we were projecting to a camera, and you had no idea what was happening on the other side. It was the hardest work I've done in a long time. And for you, someone who does it for 90 minutes, this is harder than running a long distance race, for goodness sake.
Well, if you hear the way my knees click these days, Mike, not so much. I used to run all the time, and then my knees seized up, and the doctor said, "Look, you've got a torn meniscus. Your injury is typical of aging athletes." I said, "Athlete? I got 7 goals in 10 years playing Halifax minor hockey, and 6 were on my own net." I think you might want to revise that adjective. But it is difficult. And you don't know whether, when you're not hearing any feedback, you don't know whether you're just going to have a moment of insanity and just go, "Anybody there?" Just lose your mind entirely and start speaking Martian. Which, given the bizarre geopolitical twists in the planet, I wouldn't be surprised if the Martians invade before March 21st anyway, It's incredible, isn't it, how much this worldwide global pandemic that has taken, at this point, 2.6 million casualties across the globe has made us reevaluate and recalibrate what really matters.
Yeah.
And the lesson I've taken from everything is that, which I always believed anyway, but it's just become reinforced, is that we need each other.
Yeah. We do indeed.
We need each other.
Yeah.
And yes, Mr. Disney, you're damn right. It's a small world after all. Yeah. Yeah. Someone sneezes on what's that?
To your point, we have these polarized views on the right and the left, and they really are. They're like in different planets, where so many of us who are somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
We just like to see an accommodation of the good from both sides, and something that makes it easy for us to have a happy life, a good life if possible, and to ensure that people get a fair shake at everything that's out there.
Thank you.
Yeah,
not a lot to ask, is it?
No, not really.
No. Simple human generosity and and then you've got these wingnut conspiracy theories that have insinuated themselves into daily dialogue. This the stuff that's going on in QAnon, that America is run by those giant lizards living beneath the White House on a diet of Republican babies snatched by Hillary Clinton riding a broomstick. What the hell? Then you've got that. I mean, when I put my post, I had a post that went viral in August. Actually, Occupy Democrats picked it up. And at last viewing, it was close to 5 million, I think. And oh my goodness, the stuff that came down the pipe from some people in Canada who were adherents to that doctrine. It's like, really? I paid money to see you in Edmonton. You'll never get a red cent from me again. I'm thinking, good. A culling was in order, if that's the audience I'm drawing.
Wow, really?
That's something? Yeah.
Just incredible, isn't it? Yeah.
But I'm so on the same page as you. You know that somewhere that everybody can belong. Just the stridency has no place. When I was a kid, being raised in Halifax, my mother and father's front door was swinging on the hinges every single day. Somebody coming and going.
Yeah.
Whether it was relations coming in to stay because they had to come up on course from Cape Breton or go to the hospital, or my father's, people coming from Newfoundland. And I remember Dad said when I was watching Newfoundland, he said, when I was touring Newfoundland, he said, Ronnie, watch out for the moose now. I just want to tell you something. It's not the moose hitting that's going to kill you. It's when they land in the car and their hoofs beat your face to pulp. I said, well, I'll be careful, Dad. And then I saw a third cousin once removed who had a hoof print in the side of his head. And I thought, boy, I'm not going to test that theory out at all. But everybody was welcome, everybody was welcome at the table, and he measured a man by the size of his heart, not the weight of his wallet.
Yeah.
And, I put 3 years in Los Angeles, and of course, living in Toronto and being in that show business circle for so many years. And it's not indigenous to show business. I mean, acquisition and affluence and status and all those things that so many people, not so many, but a certain cadre of society aspire to. It's just so ephemeral. Yeah. What matters is human contact and the soul note being sung. And I've heard it being sung from Corner Brook to Courtney Comox.
Well, you have such a loyal fan base across the country. I've been watching your Facebook fan page. Thanks. And it must feel good to see that you've got this kind of love across this frozen tundra we call Canada, to see so many people who are not only supportive of your comedy, but they like and love you as a person. It must be a real lift. Well,
it's humbling, Mike. I mean, you don't. I don't think about that. It's not one of those things that you dwell on. It's nice. It's an affirmation of the work, and I suppose what you aspire to be. But as my father used to say, Ronnie, there was one perfect man, and they crucified him. And he was, honest to God. And he was a church going man, Yeah. And it is nice. And it makes me a little uncomfortable because, I had a short fuse in those days when I was cornered by the network and overwhelmed with my work, doing both series. It's a Herculean task. And I always said that, TV brought the best and the worst out in me. And it was just such a weight to carry. And you needed, particularly my first show, Blackfly, I just basically thrown to the wolves. And I had no idea how big that job would be.
Yeah.
And it was an idea that had been simmering on the back burner for a couple of years, and I pitched it to Global TV, and lo and behold, it worked out. You know, I was going to satirize current social and political trends in the context of the 18th century Canadian fur trade. Simple. But I was inspired by Monty Python, the Holy Grail, and how they played with historic context and comedy, and Blackadder, and that's what I wanted. And then Global Television had an idea that it was going to be broad, corny-based comedy, and instead of having an acerbic eye toward history and current events, with a cast of characters that I'd created who are archetypes I plucked from history books, and, you know, took some fictional liberties with and put a twist on. I kind of became this Gilligan in a tri-corner hat and a ponytail at a fourth.
Yeah.
And it's so important in shows like that to have, well, in any television show, to have a tight writing room that's on the same page as you, and that everybody is taking the ship in the same direction.
Yeah.
And Salter Street, the production company at the time, I mean, it had so much promise. And I was putting 14-hour days in. And, you know, your head writer has taken a script in a direction when you've been on the set, and you come back and you go, what's that direction? You just took this sketch in, this scene. Yeah. Where are you going with this?
Yeah.
That's not what we agreed on. And then I had to stay up and rewrite that. And so it was always a constant push and pull. And after that, and you know, the cast, I was always prioritizing them, making sure that everybody was balanced, making sure that the notes we were hitting in contemporary satire also reflected certain historical accuracy. And, you know, I loved the fact that I had Mi'kmaq people speaking their native tongue in a comedy in Canada. You know, I love that we were able to elevate Indigenous issues within a comedic context. You know, my character Blackfly, he was the roving early Canadian everyman, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
But it ended up getting broader than I wanted it to be. And by the second season, I think Salter Street had really washed their hands of the project, and that was a second year too many for Global Television. They've always been a clearinghouse for American content, not Canadian. Perhaps they've changed today. And when we were canceled, I hit the road hard. 7 years, really hard, and started doing my specials each year. And that reignited my faith in the form and aligned me with the foundation that got me to Blackfly and the television Grail in the first place.
Yeah.
It was it's always been my lodestone, and it's always been my foundation, and it's where I belong. You know, and you know, I traveled blizzards a Yeti wouldn't wander from Vancouver to Prince George, trying to make a gig in time, and crisscrossing mountain passes in the Rockies, where it's just it was avoiding avalanche country and hitting black ice outside of Shelburne, Nova Scotia, and driving in northern Ontario to play cobalt and blizzards and snowplows and everything. But once again, it was real. It was real, you could feel. And there weren't 15 chefs in the kitchen. It was you and the audience, and that almost supernatural connection, that symbiotic connection between you and the room. And how do you know where to go when the audience might dip on something? But you have to go somewhere. It's a wonderful feeling to have all those balls in the air and knowing you're not going to drop them. And it takes forever. To know how to read a room and give the people who paid to see you, and maybe got a babysitter, came out for dinner, and maybe it's their only night out that month, and let them and lighten their load so that when they
Yeah.
leave the theater, they're feeling a hell of a lot happier than when they walked in. Maybe I think
Well,
that's my
I'm
call anyway.
well, I'm going to tell you, I think I understand a large part of the affection that people have for you, and one part of that is, yeah, you give a great show, like you work hard, and we know you work hard, funnier than hell, and we have an uproarious laugh, but right underneath that, we see Ron James.
Oh, thank you.
We see the person. And we know that that guy, that Canadian guy, is as true as they come. And so we not only have a great time, but we leave feeling an affection and a connection to you. And you know, Ron, you can't manufacture that. That just is a part of being great at what you do.
Well, thank you, sir, and thank you so much. Look, I just have to tip my hat to my parents for this because they were so hospitable. And there used to be a song, "There's no price tags on the doors in Newfoundland." And my father was always proud of where he was from, even though he left that rock in the middle of the Atlantic when he was 7 years old. And at his wake, there was an old merchant marine. He just died last year at 97. What was his name? Onslow Crew. Just an old English name. And come here, boy, he says. And he saw me walking. He says, I saw you walking. Your father will never die as long as you're alive. And I sat down and talked to him. And he told me about my grandmother. And he said that my grandmother, Nanny James, who lived to be 93, her door always swung off the hinges too. And she was the quintessential matron of those in exile who hung their hat on her in her hallway, her rented hallway, her coal flat in Halifax, before they went overseas to in the Corvette Navy during World War II, and so many never came back, you know? And so when he said that to me, I thought, okay, well, my father was the same, and my mom was the same. And maybe what I'm doing on stage is just the 21st century continuity of that. Because, you know, I live here in Toronto. I see my daughters. My gal doesn't live in the city. You know, and I spend a lot of time alone writing. I collaborate with my colleagues, two excellent writers I work with, Chris Finn, who wrote for Rick Mercer for 17 years and This Hour for 5, and Paul Pogue, who wrote for me for 14 and well has had his own show and wrote it just for laughs for 13 years. But for the most part, it's just the antithesis of the sense of community my house personified on Oxford Street in Halifax when I was growing up.
Yeah.
So when I hit the stage and I'm doing that show, I think I'm part of the continuity of spirit that just runs from my grandmother to my parents, to me, to you. It's just encoded in my DNA. And I don't think anybody ever left our house feeling unhappy unless they were up there for, you know, a tragic reason or something, dying in the hospital. But that's where I get it from. I get it from them. And you're right. You can't manufacture that. You either like people or you don't.
Yep.
I happen to like them, which is why it breaks my heart when you see people slip into what can only be described as a 21st century psychosis with all this conspiratorial BS.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's madness.
Yeah.
You know,
You find yourself just not watching the news many a day a week
Buddy.
because it's so repetitive and it's so depressing.
And they're all feeding on the same. They're all feeding at the same sort of trough,
Yep,
aren't they?
they are.
Yeah, yeah, they are. And you have to ingest so much in order to exculpate it as comedy, right? I mean, you have to. And but I think this March 21st show, I'm gonna try to find some hope in there, to talk about the places I've been as well. So it's going to be a mix of brand spanking new content and some classic material. People still want to see that. And I just like giving an audience an honest bang for their buck.
Yeah.
Whether it's coming from a stage in Canada or my condominium living room in downtown Toronto.
Well, we want to tell people how they can get tickets because it's so very, very simple. They just go to your
Go
website.
to the website.
Yep.
Yeah.
ronjames.ca, and you can book your tickets right there. And one of the things I really liked about the website, as I looked into some of the other aspects, you actually have people who are there for anyone that's coming on to the broadcast, and the recommendation is that people come on 15, 20 minutes early and kind of get set and get their popcorn and get everybody sat down. And if they're having trouble, that there's somebody that they can actually communicate with at your end to make sure that they've done the connecting right. I thought that
Well, that's my IT wizard, Keith Tomasek. He's had a podcast for years, and he taught social media at Western, and he's a ticket wizard. I mean, he gives symposiums on this, and it's much thanks to him that we increased our numbers the way we did. I mean, the first show we did in June, we did 320, and then in New Year's we did 3,500. And so he gives me the orders as to what to do. I mean, I've got that new post up from yesterday, and then he'll send that out. And so you have to be, he increased my Facebook numbers through strategizing, and it's exponentially since we started working together 5 years ago. So, we have him, he's on board. And then I have a couple of eager millennials working. I got a good cameraman and hungry, eager millennials. That'll keep the old fellas young. And he brought a buddy who's the sound guy. So it lends an element of professionalism and a look that we didn't have the first time we did it in June. I'm just talking to the computer. And as I say, my colleagues, Chris and Paul. And so we've got a nice little team here. And then we have somebody, Harmony Coiter in Eastern Ontario, who used to work with my producer, Terry McRae, before he went down because of COVID, although we will be up again, hopefully in late 2021, early 2022. Can't wait. And so she reaches out to the theaters that I've played across the country. And and we have a link to the theaters. They've announced us on their website to their subscribers, and every subscriber that buys a ticket as a result of a connection with that theater, we give the theater $4 on every ticket sold.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so there's a nice it's magnanimous. We're all interconnected, and these theaters always rolled out a warm welcome mat for us in 20 years, and there is, oh my gosh, they're just and a lot of them are run by volunteer docents, right?
Yep.
And it's I got to tell you though, it's been such a wonderful country to make a living in. It's that in your face kind of aggression that you feel south of the border from time to time. Granted, I mean, I've got a lot of respect for America. Chasing the sitcom dream in the early 90s is what sired my Canadian dream, right? I was there for 3 years in Los Angeles, and I was out of work for a year and came back $46,000 US in debt in 93. And I remember the year I was audited by the IRS for making, I made $37,000 that year, right? And the account, 37, yeah, that's correct.
Wow.
And the accountant I had do my, do my taxes, who also played an accountant on an episode of Mannix once. That's LA. Put a decimal in the wrong place, and so I was audited for. I owed them $2,000, and I got the notice when I was leaving in '93, and by then it was $4,000 with the accrued interest.
Yes.
I was talking to the guy in the IRS on the phone when I was in Toronto. I felt like a runaway slave who had escaped to Chatham, Ontario in 1847. You can't touch me here, buddy. I'm free. And he said, we have ways of getting that money. We have ways of making life very difficult for you. So for the longest time, every time I had to cross the U.S. border, I always thought that I'd be pistol whipped by a customs guard. And as soon as Gitmo came into effect, I thought, oh, jumpins', it's only a matter of time before they're fitting me for an orange jumpsuit. But I ended up paying it all off. But that carnivorous aggression, that absolutely blind pursuit of fame and money and status. All I wanted to do here was make a living.
Yeah.
And enjoy the work.
Yeah.
Just enjoy the work. And from time to time, your ego gets the best of you. And like when you're on TV, you think, oh, I've got to get to the next level. What's the next level in Canada?
Yeah.
I drink for free north of the tree line. That's as good as it gets.
Yep.
Somebody gave me a 7.5-pound sirloin tip moose roast the first time I played around the tip of Superior. I thought, if you get a bloody paper bag in Vegas, it's probably got the head of a teamster in it. Hey, take this to the desert, Joey. It's great. Or you go into a pub, for instance. I went into a pub with a buddy of mine that was adjacent to the theater, and it was a Tuesday night. I played Summerside, right? And I went into the pub, and the bartender said, oh, you guys are drinking for free. This place was packed on a Tuesday night in December because you came here. And I thought, that's it.
Wow.
That's it. Free beer, man. We had free beer and chicken wings. I thought, this is wonderful. And so there's all kinds of moments like that, I went halibut fishing off the coast of Victoria, BC, with a radio crew, or getting comps for relatives and friends and or people you meet. And it's once again, it gets back to the roots of hospitality I was raised around.
Yeah. And
I think what you send out comes back, right? And look at that orange-faced mutant in the States, how he's destroyed that country, or at least not destroyed the country, but came close to doing it, and advocating that insurrection.
Yeah.
Right? And never saying anything.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? As my buddy made a joke, he said, everyone knows that if you've got an insurrection that lasts more than 4 hours, you have to see a doctor. But yeah, and that's just confrontation, it's, violence. And there's a vibe here, as I call it, the soul note, the heartline hum of people in place. And by the way, that canteen at the Halliburton Forest,
yes,
they've got it staged, man. Mike, that poutine, I've had poutine in the Saguenay that can't hold the candle of that.
Really?
Oh, that's good poutine. Good poutine and great cheeseburgers. I'm going to go up there and try out one of the lakes for trout fishing when the lakes clear up. But you know what's amazing is when I put that post up on Facebook about me heading up north, half the people were warning me about bears. There must be this primal fear of bears in the country.
I
said
thought
it's
that was
February,
pretty
they're
funny.
still asleep. But
They are so asleep right now. They're not waking up for a while, particularly in these temperatures.
someone told me, someone actually posted and said that a full moon in February, the Anishinaabe people call it the bear moon, because that's when the the baby bears are born. What do you call a baby bear? A cub. It's when the cubs are born. And so, yeah, that's, and I've chatted, I've had great conversations with Indigenous people in my travels across the country. They just sit down and start talking and sharing their life stories. A waitress from Inverness who brought her 11 brothers and sisters out, 2, 3 at a time in the early 70s when she read about the land of opportunity, which was Alberta.
It'd be nice to be able to get back to doing that again. Getting out and chatting with people.
It's a little different. I mean, a lot of that changed. People started talking differently to me once I was on television.
Really?
Not a lot, but they're just more tentative. They're just I don't know what it is, but a lot of the conversations that I've talked about in my book, I'd only been in the public eye a little bit. I had a special or showed up on Just for Laughs or the Halifax Comedy Festival or comics, but I was a presence, but I wasn't a weekly presence. And I remember my daughter and I went kayaking to the Northwest Territories when she was 15 years old. She's 32 now, so that was 17 years ago. And the guy had a great website. The guy's name was Tundra Tom. Sounds like a cartoon character you'd watch when you were 6. And anyway, he was this monstrous cyclopean-sized individual who didn't pick us up at the airport and was gruff, showed up to pick us up in a plane with holes in it that was built by Rosie the Riveter. We were going 3.5 hours into the tundra to this camp that looked good on site, but when I got there, it looked like a halfway house of Quonset huts sinking into the permafrost with a rat's nest of hoses coming from the lake, and whose weekly diet of food was basically porridge in the morning, and in the evening, canned peas, canned carrots, and ham. But he had when he picked us up in the morning, my daughter saw him come into the hotel first, and her eyes went saucer wide. He was wearing slippers, had a sweatshirt on with the food he'd stolen from the wolves in April. His last time his hair had seen in a comb, his mother licked it down with spit during his first communion when he was 7. And he had 3 packs of Players Light in his left hand and a mitt full of pepperoni sticks in the right. I thought, man, we're in for a chore here. Anyway, we landed at the place, and he was gruff and rude, and I thought, oh my gosh, why are we here? And then 3 days later, we were in country on our trip with one of his guides, and he lands. This guy in dirty mechanic overalls comes walking through the woods with a giant watermelon. And Tom looks at me, and he said, Tundra Tom looks at me and goes, gee, why didn't you tell me you were on television? So don't tell me there's no perks in Canadian showbiz. If you go north of the tree line, at some point, a man who should be in a real halfway house is delivering you a full watermelon in an Arctic lake in the middle of the afternoon.
That's too funny. Yeah. What great memories. Great memories.
Good times. And I'm grateful for all of them. It's been just, I don't want to sound too maudlin either, brother, but it's during this time of isolation and separation from this calling of mine, and everyone who does stand up is called to it. The good ones are anyway, great acts like Jeremy Hotz and bulletproof acts like him and Brent Butts, and the Canadian ones, Derek Edwards, Mike Wilmot.
Yeah.
These great comedians who I admire. We're called to it because this is what we do. And it's a channeling of the life force. And to be given the opportunity to line the planets up and make sense of the chaos we're walking to in the language of laughs is a luxury not to be taken for granted.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm talking to you today. So thanks, man.
I'll tell you, man, March 21st will be a lot of your fans, a lot of your friends who just happen to be fans will be
Thanks.
watching again. And we're delighted, delighted for you that you've made this work.
Oh, thanks.
Not
Thank
only
you.
for
Thank you.
economic reasons, but geez, this is a strange time, and you need every little moment of opportunity to be connected to people that you can get, and this is a great
It's
way.
good for your mental health.
Yeah, we'll look
It
forward
really
to it.
is. And this career in stand-up in Canada has been a victory in baby steps, traveling to one gig at a time, 1 kilometer at a time. And I'd be damned if COVID was going to scuttle that. So tune in on the 21st, and who knows, maybe the sheen will run off. It'll be off the pumpkin of Ron James if I'm a next door neighbor to up there. He's not funny all the time.
Sounds good.
I'd love to be up there. So who knows? Maybe in the next few years I will, because it's glorious country, and it's it's that you just feel the holy note of you hear the holy note of the Canadian Shields singing when you're on snowshoes in the winter up there.
You sure do. You sure.
And the summer too. So
all
right, buddy.
We'll look forward to it, March 21st, and we'll remind people that it's ronjames.ca to get your tickets. I got to tell you, it's lovely to see you in person, and
you too.
Put a face to the ball cap. It's great.
Thanks, buddy. And well, I got the ball cap on because my hair, I got lockdown hair.
I noticed that.
If I don't get a trim soon, I'm going to be singing Point in a Bon Jovi reunion band. Whatever. Anyway. But thanks a lot, and thanks for all the chats during the New Year's specials too, man. It means the world to me, Mike. Thank you.
Well, it's been good, and we'll look forward to the next opportunity to have a Gab Fest at some point.
All the best.
All right. Thanks a lot, Ron.
Take care of yourself, my friend.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.